Hi, this is Stephen from SteadyMaker. In the last video, we discussed unboxing your mini tank and checking the components inside, making sure you have everything you need in order to set up your stabilizer successfully. In this video, we're going to discuss setup and pre-balancing your stabilizer. Pre-balancing your stabilizer means making sure your camera is straight and level inside your stabilizer before you switch it on. This is half of the battle. If you successfully and efficiently pre-balance your stabilizer will be much smoother when you switch on your motors and use it. So that's an important part of the process. I've unboxed all my components. I've set them out here, and we're going to take you through the process of setting up your stabilizer. So one thing we haven't shown you is basically recharge your batteries before use. When you receive your stabilizer, make sure that both your remote and your batteries are charged, fully charged and ready. In order to do that, you just use the battery charger we have included. Make sure that the positive and negative is in the right direction and put that into the power. 2-3 hours and you'll have a full charge on the batteries. There is a charge meter on the battery charger, so you can see as it is charging how many batteries are in the charger and when they're fully charged. Same with the remote. You'll see a little charging light on your remote. Once you've charged your entire system, then you're ready to construct your stabilizer. What I'm going to start with is the battery case and the batteries. You'll see a little battery case. This goes inside the main handlebar, and the batteries go inside this case. And it's a little hard to tell, but there are 3 springs on your battery case. And with your rechargeable 18650 lithium-ion batteries, you'll see a flat side and a side with a circle. The flat side goes on your springs basically, and the side with the circle goes on the opposite end. So the flat side, which is the negative, goes on the springs. 2 of the springs are facing up, 1 of the springs are facing down. So make sure you place your batteries in the correct order. That means the negative on the bottom for 2 of them, and for the third one, the negative is on the top, so the battery is in the reverse. This will also go inside the main handle, but I'll show you that a little later. So, as I have mentioned before, this is the main body of your stabilizer. It includes the cradle for your base plate and camera, and the top of the handle, and your 3 brushless gimbal motors. Now, you'll find on the rear motor and the side motor, in other words, the roll and the pitch motors, you'll see a SteadyMaker sticker. You want to make sure that the SteadyMaker sticker is facing the right way up, in other words, upright. If your sticker is upside down, that means that you have your pitch motor on the wrong side. So this is the wrong side because the sticker is upside down. You want to make sure that the sticker is the right way. So your sticker needs to be on the right side. If you check the right side and you notice that the sticker is facing upwards, then that means you have your stabilizer in the right configuration and your motors are in the right positions for launch. What we're going to do is attach the battery case to the bottom of the handle. You'll see a small metal attachment that slides in. You don't need to force it in, you don't need to push it in too hard, just push it in gently so that it's now positioned on the bottom of your stabilizer. And to protect the battery case, you have the main handle. This slides over the battery case. It's a very close fit, so the battery case won't move around in the handle. Once the handle is slid down, you just screw it into position. So I'm going to screw the handlebar Screw it until it's tight, but not too tight, because remember, you'll need to remove this at the end of the shoot. You want to make it tight so that it doesn't move around, but you don't want to make it too tight so that you'll find it too difficult to move, or you might break something inside. So just nice and firm, tight in there. Now, this is the body of your stabilizer with the handle attached. So you can begin to see how the stabilizer will operate. Now, the back of the handle, there is a small joystick. This is a thumb-mounted joystick that will control the pitch, the yaw, and the roll of your stabilizer when needed. There is an on-off switch, a little yellow on-off switch. On the front of your stabilizer, there is a silver button. This silver button controls the different modes of your stabilizer. We'll talk about modes in another video, but this changes the way your stabilizer operates. So you'll be using that silver button a lot. Now, once you've set this up, in order to put it down easily and pre-balance easily, you will be using your small tripod. The small tripod screws onto the base of your handle. If you notice at the bottom of your handle, there is a tripod mount screw thread. It's a standard tripod mount screw thread, and this is a standard tripod mount screw. So you just screw the small tripod attachment on to the bottom of your stabilizer. I'll just screw it into place until it's tight. Again, tight but not too tight. And then you can set down your stabilizer, and you'll find it a lot easier to pre-balance when you've set it down on a surface. You can pre-balance it with just putting the handle down, but you have to be careful that you don't knock your stabilizer over. This makes it much easier to pre-balance your stabilizer. One other feature I haven't discussed on the main body of the stabilizer is the battery meter. You'll find a battery meter on the bottom there, and also there's a small USB port. Now, to communicate with your stabilizer, you can communicate with two ways. You can use Bluetooth to connect your stabilizer to your cell phone or a tablet or a computer using software called Simple BGC. Simple BGC is for Android and Windows primarily. For Apple or iOS, there is an app you can use called Robotniks. Robotniks is the Apple version of Simple BGC. These are your Windows, Android, and Apple-based software, so you can communicate to your stabilizer and also control it remotely via Bluetooth. If you want to use a USB connection, there is also a small USB port in the side, and you can connect it to your laptop or to your computer via that USB port and communicate with it directly. Simple BGC and Robotniks is only really needed if you're going to remotely control your stabilizer via a tablet or a phone, or if you need to tune your stabilizer. But I suggest this is only for experts, because you can easily delete your factory settings if you make the wrong choices while you're using Simple BGC. So only use this when you really need to retune your stabilizer. A note about the motors. These motors are encoded motors. Encoded motors is a step up from the 32-bit motors that we have in our SMG Extreme. Encoded motors means that it delivers power more accurately and better to the motors, to the brushless gimbal motors. This results in more accurate corrections and control over your stabilizer when using it. So this should mean smoother operation for your stabilizer. It also means it's easier to pre-balance and set up because you have more correction built into the encoded motors, and it is more power efficient. This means you'll get a longer battery life out of the mini tank than you will the SMG Extreme. The next thing I would suggest is put your camera in your base plate. Now, as I've said in the components checklist, you can use your own base plate with our stabilizer if you choose to. It's easy to adjust the width and the position of the cradle to fit different camera base plates. However, we do include one. You'll notice on the bottom of the base plate, it tells you the direction that the lens should be in. This tells you the right way round to put your base plate onto your camera. So I can see that the words say lens pointing this way. So I'm going to put this on the back of my camera. And it's a simple screw thread. Just screws on to the tripod mount that should be underneath your camera. And I'm going to keep the bottom underneath the center of the lens so that it's straight and level on your camera. A good idea is to use a set of keys or use a small coin to tighten up these screws. Once your camera is secure on the base plate, then you will be placing your base plate inside the cradle of the stabilizer. This is where you start to pre-balance your stabilizer. So let's talk a bit about pre-balancing. Pre-balancing means that your camera will be straight and level inside your stabilizer before you switch the motors on. What this means is that if your camera is correctly pre-balanced, then the stabilizer will not have to work as hard in order to maintain that balance during operation. So pre-balancing is important. If you get that right, it means that you'll have a much smoother operation when you use your stabilizer. Remember the stickers that we talked about? Make sure they are upright so that the pitch motor is on the right side of your stabilizer, literally on the right side of your stabilizer. If the sticker is facing upwards in the correct position, that means you've correctly placed the pitch motor on the right side. This is the roll motor. This goes at the back, and the yaw motor is underneath. This controls the left and right panning of your camera. Now, what you want to do when you pre-balance is you want to isolate each axis in turn and make sure that the balance is correct before moving on to the next. This means there are 3 axes to balance. There is the pitch, which is the upwards and downwards panning of the camera. There is the roll, which is at the back here, which is the horizon line, basically adjusting the left and right tilt of your camera. And there is the yaw. The yaw motor is underneath at the top of the handle. This is the left and right turning or panning of your camera. You need to isolate the balance and correct the balance in each of these 3 axes individually, and then collectively it should be balanced before you switch your motors on. Now, if you check on the bottom of the cradle here, there's 2 halves, and these halves can be tightened or loosened with the screws. I wanted to loosen them a little just to make sure there's enough space to slide the base plate into. And then I'm going to slide my base plate down into the setup. It's a little tricky to do this at first, but when you get used to your setup, you'll find it becomes easier with practice. So you just slide your base plate down. Now, in order to isolate the axes, what you're going to do is just hold your stabilizer in the other axes so that the other motors don't move. In other words, your yaw and your roll, you want to make sure that we're not checking these ones at the moment. All we're going to check is the pitch motor, which is at the side here. Now, it's a little tricky. Make sure that you keep your camera secure before you tighten everything, because it can easily slide out at this stage of the cradle. So you don't want your camera to drop out of the cradle. What you're going to do to balance the pitch is you're going to check to see if your camera is straight and level. At the moment, my camera is front heavy. It's tilting forward. What you want to do is loosen the screws on the cradle and make small micro adjustments forward and backwards until your camera is effectively balanced in the pitch, which means it will be straight and level and free floating. In order to do that, so I can see that it's front heavy, right now I'm going to loosen the screws in the cradle, and I'm going to slide my base plate just a little backwards. You want to make small adjustments, a few centimeters at most, and you can check before you tighten it. Now you can see it's back heavy, so it's sliding backwards. So I'm going to nudge it forward a little again. And you want to find just the middle ground for adjusting. When you feel that it's balanced in the center, that it looks like it's straight and level, then hold your base plate in place and again reach underneath and tighten those screws at the bottom just to secure your base plate in that position. So now if I nudge my camera, you'll see that it returns to a straight and level. This is without the motors. So now your camera is in the base plate, your base plate is in the cradle, and in the pitch axis, your camera is effectively balanced. It means it's straight and level. So the next thing we're going to adjust is the roll axis. The roll is at the back of your camera. Again, the trick is to make sure this is balanced in all three axes individually. So now we don't need to worry about the pitch, that's already been balanced. We can hold the pitch motor, and we don't need to worry about the yaw. We need to worry about the roll at the back. You'll see the red handle at the top of the screw at the back. If you loosen this, this enables you to slide the arm attached to the roll motor to the left and to the right. This will adjust the balance in your roll axis. So I can see that it's tilting to my left, so I want to counterbalance the tilt. Now there are two ways to counterbalance the tilt. You can slide your cradle to the left and right to balance your camera, or you can also slide the arm to the left and right on your roll motor. You usually use a combination of the two in order to find a center of balance. It's still rolling to the left, so I want to slide my camera in the opposite direction to the right. So what I'm going to do is unscrew these at the bottom of my cradle, and I'm going to slide the entire cradle to the right to adjust. And again, we're looking for straight and level. So if I let go, it's still tilting to the left, so I have to slide my camera to the right to adjust. And it looks like that's a good level in your camera. So again, now I'll screw the base plate tight. So when you have found the center of balance in one axis, it might affect the center of balance in the other axis. So don't be afraid to return to the original and just tweak the settings until it's rebalanced. So right now we have a good roll axis adjustment. It's straight and level in the roll. We have a good pitch axis adjustment. It's straight and level in pitch. If I nudge the axis, you'll see that it returns to a pretty much straight and level. It does not have to be 100% perfect, but the closer you get it in the pre-balancing, the smoother your stabilizer operation will be when you switch the motors on. Encoded motors are much more accurate at compensating for a bad pre-balancing than 32-bit motors, but you still want to make sure that you can pre-balance your camera effectively. Okay, so I'm going to call that balanced in the pitch and the roll. Now we have two of the three axes. The third axis is the yaw. Now the yaw is slightly different. Because it's under the camera, it's difficult to see when it's balanced. What you need to do, and it's a little tricky because it's a heavy setup, is you need to effectively pull the handle to the side, and you need to hold the handle straight out to the side. Now it's quite heavy. If your camera is tilting, if you see the axis is tilting like that, it means it's not quite balanced. In order to do that, you can unscrew the yaw, and you can adjust by pulling the arm backwards and forwards in the yaw. As long as it's quite close, then that will be good when you switch the motors on. When you're happy with the adjustments, when you feel confident that it's balanced in all three axes, the pitch, the roll, and the yaw, remember you balance the yaw by holding the handle out to the side, checking if it's straight and level. If it's tilted upwards or tilted downwards, then you can adjust this small screw at the side, slide the main arm backwards and forwards until the yaw axis is balanced. In my experience though, that's pretty well balanced. Once that's done, you can remove the tripod if you need to, but I'm going to keep it on there for the purposes of this so I can set it down easily between operations. There is a small yellow button at the back of the handle, which is where your thumb will be. And if I just lift my stabilizer, hit the button, you'll hear a series of tones, and then you will see the motors power up. You'll feel the motors power up, and you'll see the battery indicator light come on. If none of this happens, if you don't hear any tones, it means that either the battery case is not connected properly inside the handle, or your batteries are not in the battery case in the right way. Maybe they're upside down. So you want to check that out if nothing happens when you switch it on. But hopefully if I've got everything right, you can hear the batteries, you can hear the tone when the stabilizer powers up. Now you might notice it's a little off balance or it's not quite straight and level. It's easy to adjust that. One of the modes that we have is called a freeze mode. If you hold your camera in any position for 3 seconds, it will automatically align the motors in that direction. So I can see that it's slightly off on the roll axis here. So what I will do is I will just nudge the roll axis, hold it for 3 seconds, and then let go, and it has adjusted the roll axis. So you want to make sure that it's straight and level in all 3 axes, and now you should have a working stabilizer that you can use and set down between shoots that's effectively balanced. If you notice it drifts or if it's not straight in any of the axes, again, you can use the freeze mode that we talked about. Holding your camera, it will lock the camera position. I can also use this to make some strange angles if I need to lock it during a shoot. So for example, if I just hold it there for 3 seconds and then let go, now it's locked in this position. So again, anytime you want, you can just hold it in a different position and then it will lock to a new position. If you want to reset it, all you need to do is just put it straight and level again and then let the motors take control, and your stabilizer will be ready again for a shoot. So your stabilizer is now powered on and ready to shoot. You can keep the bottom tripod attachment on if you're using it this way with the main handlebar. If you use it in inverted mode with the handlebars attachment, I'm going to show you that in the next video. You can remove this tripod because you won't need it. You'll set it down differently between takes. But this is very useful when you want to just put it down between takes and just leave it. And again, the yellow button switches on and off your stabilizer. There is a thumb-mounted joystick at the back of the handle. This can control your stabilizer, so you can control the camera's perspective during the shoot. And also don't forget your freeze mode, that you can freeze the motors in any particular direction if you need to reset it during a shoot. This is very, very useful, and this is another good feature of the encoded motors. So I'm just going to put it straight and level again and reset it. Switch the batteries off, and now it's back into free floating. As you can see, an effective pre-balance means that you will have much smoother footage during using your stabilizer with the power on. In the next video, I'm going to talk about your handlebar attachment and the inverted mode, and also different modes of use with the silver button. Otherwise, hope that's helped with setting up your stabilizer for everyday use.